Being a ministry wife is a vocation without a job description. And let's be honest, sometimes it seems like ministry might be easier if we did have one. If you are a ministry wife like me and are looking for hope, perspective, and a little bit of practical advice regarding your role, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Christine Hoover, author of How to Thrive as a Pastor's Wife. Welcome to the Ministry Wives Podcast, a production of the North American Mission Board. Join me as we hear from women from various ministry contexts, having authentic conversations about our shared joys and challenges, even the ones we're unsure we can talk about. No topic is off limits. Today, my guest is Krissie Inserra. Krissie has been married to Dean for 20 years, and they have 4 children, and you will be surprised at their ages in our conversation today. The Inserras started City Church in Tallahassee 16 years ago in Krissie's in-laws' living room, and they've met in 17 different locations, and they're now in their own building. She is a stay-at-home mom, and she volunteers in kids ministry at church and usually leads a Bible study at their church. Okay, so I asked Krissie to join me to talk about motivations for ministry. Why do we do what we do? And how can we know if our motivations are not quite right? Krissie shares some of her sticking points along the way in ministry, both in the beginning years and in her current season of ministry. You're going to love this conversation and perhaps be a little challenged too. So here, friends, is my conversation with Krissie Inserra. It is my pleasure to welcome Krissie Inserra to the podcast. Hi, Krissie.
Hi, Christine. Thanks so much for having me. I'm
Right.
excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Right whenever I said that, I remembered I've met your husband before, and when he told me that people always think that your name is Sarah because Dean Inserra,
Yes.
but
If
your
you,
name is Krissie.
yes, it's so confusing. And if you don't see it written, because it's Inserra,
Uh-huh.
it's just very confusing to people. So I usually get funny looks when I say my name is Chrissy, and I usually don't introduce myself by my full name. And so they're like, "Why don't you have a full name?" Because it's too confusing. I don't do that unless they say, "What's your last name?" Then I say, "Okay, it's Inserra," but I'm not two people. Yeah.
Krissie and Sarah.
Uh huh.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
funny. Okay, well, will you introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us about your family and your ministry
Yes.
context?
Yes, absolutely. I'm Krissie Inserra with an I, and I've been married to Dean for 20 years. Just this past December, so we have been married for a good long time. We've gotten our feet wet now, and we're figuring out this whole marriage thing. And we have 4 children. Our oldest is 17, and he's a junior in high school. Our middle, well, he was our middle. Our second is 13, and he is in middle school. And then our third one is 9, and she's in elementary school. So we have all the different schools. I have 3 different schools. And then we had a surprise bonus baby. And so she's 1. So I have all the schools and then 1 at home. And it's been a wild and crazy ride. And God has just taught me so much about not, you can't plan for, you think you can plan for things, and He knows better.
Yes.
So
I feel
it's
like we just need
incredible.
to take a moment to
Uh-huh.
let that sink in.
Yes.
The ages of your
Yes.
children. Your youngest is 1, your oldest is 17.
Yes. I am
That,
shopping for diapers and college all at the
yes.
same time.
And that requires
Mhm.
such different kinds of parenting all at the same time.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been really great because I feel like I've gained a whole lot of extra perspective with her now. I know
Mm,
how fast everything flies by, and
yeah.
I'm not chasing after, younger toddlers or preschoolers. And so I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, good.
Um, and I mean, she is really trying me with the no sleep thing. But I really know she will eventually sleep because
Yeah.
my other ones do sleep now. So I'm like, okay, I think she'll sleep. She will at some point. Um, but it's been a lot of fun, and to see older ones interact with a baby is really sweet.
Oh,
That's been really
yes. I
fun.
didn't think about that part of it. That would be
Yeah,
really amazing for your
yeah,
kids to kind of learn about babies.
yes. Oh yeah, I told them they're all going to be wonderful, confident parents when it comes because
Yeah,
they'll have held a newborn, and they'll have dealt with all the things that
I
entails.
love that.
Hmm.
Okay, so where are y'all serving?
We are at City Church in Tallahassee, Florida, and we planted it. My oldest is 17, so we planted it 16 years ago. And it was, I've always just had young children in the mix, and here we go. But it's my husband's hometown, and I went to Florida State here. So we've lived in Tallahassee a long time. We knew we wanted to be here. He, oddly enough, has always known he wanted to start a church. And, 25, 30 years ago, that was not really a thing, but he didn't know what that would look like. But he's like, I feel like I want to start a church that all my friends would want to come to. So that's kind of what gave us the vision for our church, and the time became right. It seemed like the time was all wrong because my youngest, or my only child at the time, was 6 months old. There were some health concerns. I wasn't working, and he had a job. He was on staff at a different church, and we both felt like, okay, no, now's the time. So we just did it, and it didn't seem like the wisest decision, but God is sovereign. And so God has blessed it. It hasn't been easy. There have been many, many times in those first few years where we've been told, okay, well, we can't afford to keep the doors open for the next 3 months if something doesn't change. But God's always brought in usually an individual who has just said, what do you need? What can I write a check for? And it's like God has come through every single time. And it really is, Psalm 119, where he says, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. And I always take that picture of this light on your path. When I have a lantern and it's really dark, I'm not seeing more than a step or two in front of me. And that's really all God gives you. He gives you for the next step, and you don't know what's beyond that, but he's given us that, and it's really been neat to watch. So I've gotten a front row seat to that. I've always had young children in the mix, but I've gotten a front row seat to that for the last 16 years. So we're in a college town. We have Florida State University. We have FAMU, which is at HBCU. It's a historically Black college and university. It's a large college, and then we have a large community college here. So we have lots and lots and lots of college students. And when we first started the church, it was us. We were the old people and the college students. And so, giving is not large at that point. But again, God has just blessed us, and it's been crazy to see, and just wonderful to see how he's worked through this. And so we have we have a large college population, but since we've been around for 16 years, we have really become a truly multi-generational church.
I love that.
It's been so neat to see.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What is your sweet spot in ministry over these
Oh, it kind of
years?
changes. Um, I have usually worked in kids in some capacity.
Mhm.
I enjoy children. And the last few years, I've been doing kids check in, and I love that. And I just sit at the desk, as people are coming in. So I get to see all the families that come in during one of the services, and I get to talk to them, and I get to see their kids. And then, but I've taught some in some classrooms. I usually lead a Bible study at some
Mhm.
point. Am I leading? I'm not leading one at the moment, but when I'm able to, I've led one on and off for the entire life of our church, and then some. And so I kind of come and go when I need to. And then I'm the stereotypical pastor's wife who plays the piano. So sometimes I play in the band, but those are early mornings. And with Dean, he's kind of,
Yeah.
he can't get the kids ready for me in the morning when I have to be there at 6:30 because he has
Yeah.
to be there too. So I don't do it very often. I'm, a few times a year.
You might be
Um,
the first pastor's wife I've ever talked to
really?
who doesn't say, "I'm not the typical pastor's wife." You just said the stereotype. That's so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, I
I
guess
love
it's
it.
not that stereotypical.
Yeah.
But yes,
That's
so I do,
great.
and it's fun. So I just kind of bounce around where I like, and Dean has set the tone for that from the very beginning. I've
Mm.
never been on staff at the church, and right now I'm not working a job outside the home. And so Dean has made it very clear to staff and to members that, like, his expectation on me is to serve in
Mhm.
whatever capacity I want to, and just be a really good church member and love my church. And I
I love
do.
it.
And that's so freeing.
That's so great. Well,
So,
you've been in the ministry for long enough now to have certainly wrestled with motivations for why you do what you do. And that's really what I want to focus on with you
yeah.
today, because in ministry we're all faced with these moments where we're really challenged to consider our motivations. And
Mhm.
if anyone listening is like me, there are times where you realize that you have distorted motivations, skewed motivations, impure motivations. So I'd love to hear from you, Krissie, if you could tell us a point or two in your ministry life where the Lord has shown you or
Yeah.
given you insight about your motivations and perhaps challenged you with what
Yes.
He's shown you.
Yes, absolutely. Um, so I think I've naturally always been a people pleaser. And I think we use that term as like this is a personality trait,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of sin in that because I'm trying to please man, not God a lot of times. And so, I'm so very concerned about, am I doing what's right? What they think I should do.
Right.
Am I following what people think my job is supposed to look like? So one of the things when we started our church, we didn't, all we had was college students and us and Dean's parents. Um, and then as we grew, we started to get more, more generations and more people. And then at maybe about 5, 6 years into it, I realized that we could maybe we had some older ladies and I didn't know them really well. And so I thought, what would a good pastor's wife do?
Mm.
They would do a tea. We should hold a tea. Uh,
Of
and
course.
great, because that's what you do. So I gathered some of the staff and the wives together, and some good key volunteers. And I said, we need to hold a tea because that's what you do, you know? And so they were like, "Oh, okay." I don't even drink tea, but I was never involved in like women's tea at our churches growing up. And so I didn't know what this was supposed to be, but I just thought that's what you should do. So needless to say, it never got off the ground and we didn't do a tea, because I realized very quickly that God did not make me the pastor's wife or the woman, forget the pastor's wife, the woman who sets up tea. I a lot of times I wish he did because I love, the beauty of just being able to set the table so nice and the thought that goes into let's have everybody bring their china and that's not me. And I've learned to accept that God made me um, very low key, very I'm not going to run a whole lot of things. I think I'm expecting myself, and I have for years expected myself to step in the lead of a
Yeah.
lot of ministries or things because that's what I felt like I was supposed to do. I'm just filling these shoes. And the beauty of it is, we started our church. I did not step into a church where that's what the pastor's wife did. So, and Dean reminded me, he's like, we set our own culture. That is not the culture here. You don't have to make that be the culture. So I was like, oh, okay. So then a few years down the road, when we decided it was time to start a women's ministry, I thought I should probably head this thing up because I'm Dean's wife, and that's what we do. And again, and part of it was I I would really love for people to see that I am excellent at taking a ministry and starting it and leading it and it just I very quickly realized that's not my gifting and that's okay. And it would probably be even worse if I took it and didn't follow through with it and fell flat on my face. And then now, what do we do? So, God had to show me that this is not the area where I've gifted you. Now, I am very involved in our women's ministry and I speak at it sometimes, but I'm not leading it and I'm not planning it. And that, again, that is so freeing to know that this is not the area that He has gifted me. And just because some other pastors' wives, that seems to be what they do and they're good at it, I'm I'm still, a good ministry wife because I'm helping out in other ways,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You touched on a lot of things that we do to ourselves. We
yes.
say, what would a good pastor's wife
Hmm.
do?
Hmm.
I wish I was this.
Yes.
I wish I had this gift. I
Hmm.
should do
Hmm.
these things.
Hmm.
These are the I can relate to that so much, and I think we all can because we kind of put these expectations on ourselves. So I wish or I should. And so I'm wondering how you talk yourself through that when you recognize that you're thinking those thoughts.
Mhm.
What do you
Um,
say to yourself instead?
oh, well, I tell myself, that's not who I am. I have to keep reminding myself, who am I in Christ and what has he made me to do? Where has he gifted me? Because I do have giftings. And it really helps when other people, will just kind of say out of the blue, I love when you taught this. And I'm like, okay, so that's one area where he's gifted me. But that doesn't mean I need to do it all the time, because then God has really, and maybe one of the reasons that I had a baby so late in life is that is one way that it's a concrete way that God keeps me grounded and keeps me from feeling the pressure to do more. Um, because it's just a pressure thing that I put on myself. And now I'm in a stage where I physically can't, because 4 kids is a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And when one of them is a baby, and, we don't have any drivers at the moment. And so I'm relying on a lot of people, and I don't like asking a lot of people for a lot of help. And so that's another area where God is growing me and saying, you have to. So I'm learning I can take on some things, and I want to take on everything. I want to take every opportunity that comes my way
I do
because I feel
too.
like I should.
Yeah.
Um, but and as we've grown, and as Dean is getting more involved in things, and as Dean is doing more things, I find people ask me to do things that they assume that I'm good at because I'm married to Dean, and I'm like, you have no idea.
Mhm.
um, and I think that is probably common to a lot of pastors' wives, is you will get asked to meet with people and provide wisdom from God, and you do have wisdom from God, but you may not be gifted in counseling or in a lot of these areas. And it's okay to say, you know what, I will sit and talk with you. I would love to get coffee with you, and then I'm going to introduce you to this other
Mhm.
person who is really gifted there.
Mhm.
So that's one area that I've specifically had as well, where people will just assume that I'm going to counsel you and work with you, and I'm like, I can for a few minutes, and then I'm not. I've reached
Right.
my lid. I can't do it
Right.
anymore. So
That's good. That's good.
yeah.
Well, you put all this under the umbrella of people pleasing,
Yeah. Mhm.
and that can really, really cause dysfunction for us in
Mhm.
ministry if we live according to what people think of us or what people want of us, and sometimes trying to they may not say what they want, but we try to figure out what they want. And so how has God helped you, like even some of the things you're saying right there where you're like, I can do this but I can't do that, and knowing that that's going to disappoint somebody, that's a skill that is learned over time.
It
And so
is.
I'm thinking of a young pastor's wife who's like, I don't even know if I can say no to somebody. Am I allowed to say no?
Mhm.
How would you encourage her to think about these things?
Um, I hate to say it this way. The more you do it, the more you realize, okay, sometimes it's good. You are going to disappoint people. And every time I do, I have a sick gut. I hate it. It's gut wrenching. But the more I do it, I'm realizing, I'm not saying the more you disappoint people, the easier it gets. Don't hear that. But when you are able to kind of filter out the areas that God has gifted you and the time that He's allowed you, like, what is your expendable time? Right now, my expendable time is very small. Um, but in a couple of years, I know it's going to be
Mhm.
more. And so I have also learned seasons. So to the
Mhm.
pastor's wife who's starting out, and you might have a young family, seasons, seasons, seasons. You might be in a season right now where all you can do is show up at church on Sunday, and you're probably not going to be able to go to the early service, and that's okay. If your church has multiple services, don't make yourself go to all of them if that's at all possible. We're at this moment we have 3 services. I don't go to all 3 services. I've told people you will probably never see me at the 8:30 service because I just
Yeah.
can't get it together to get there, and that's okay. Um, so to just kind of relax, talk to your husband also about, like, okay, what are your expectations on me? Because I had to realize that what I thought were Dean's expectations were not his expectations.
Yes.
And he had verbalized to me, oh, no, no, no. it was so helpful for me for him to tell me, I want you to be a good church member and love your church and serve in an area, just like we would expect everyone to serve in some capacity, whatever that may be. And it will change over time.
Hmm.
But I want you to love your church. And
Hmm.
so, whatever you need to do to love your church.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I said that, thinking of a younger pastor's wife, but I think that over time there are, you've been 2 decades in ministry.
Yeah.
And I would say for me, I may feel like, okay, I've kind of learned some things about that. I've kind of moved beyond the people pleasing. But what would you say in this time of ministry life are some maybe sticking points for you with
Yeah.
motivations?
Yeah. I feel since we've been at it for a while and our church has grown, and we were a church plant. We planted ourselves, and we were, um, we were just getting started. And so, but we have passed the 3-year mark. We're self-sustaining, and we planted differently than a lot of the churches do now. But we are we are a healthy, growing church that has been around for 16 years. And I pray that we're around for many, 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 many more. So there's that expectation of now, okay, well, now I should be at, maybe I should write a book. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. And I don't think I should right now. And there's just, okay, well, you've done this, so now what's next? What's next? And
Mm,
when you're in this later stage, you have to be content with, what's next for me might be, I'm going to keep leading my Bible study, and I love it when I can do it, and I'm going to keep staying in God's word for me, and I'm going to keep reading through my Bible this year, and I'm going to keep what what is helping me to personally grow. And because I have children in my home, and I feel like I've started over in child raising, and so it almost makes you feel like you're starting over in ministry a little bit. um,
mhm,
so what does that look like in teaching my baby? How does parenting her look again? And my older ones, how does parenting them look? So it's a lot of, I feel like I've been brought back into my home, and that's kind of been my main
hmm,
sphere of influence right now. And that's really hard for me because I want to be involved in everything in our
yeah.
church. I mean, I can't stress to you enough. I love my church, and I love to be involved in my church. And I'm in a season right now where it's my involvement is more coming from
Mm,
home, and I have to be content in that. But I feel like
mhm,
I've been at this enough where I should be able to do more outside, and I'm not. And
mm.
that's where God has me right now.
That's interesting because as you're talking, I'm thinking I don't have that same situation
Right.
with a baby.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes when we're younger in ministry, we kind of think of it like an upward moving arrow,
Yes.
that we're going to have this growth maybe in our church, or we're going to have this more opportunity as we get
Hmm.
older as the pastor's
Hmm.
wife. And sometimes God takes us into a really quiet,
Yes.
like small space
Yes.
in the middle of it. Like I would
Uh-huh.
say he did that for me in my 40s.
Uh-huh.
And that was so unexpected. And I think that it was good because it showed me my idea of what should be and
Mhm.
maybe some of the motivation of why I was doing what I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and honestly, a lot when you're really honest, if I'm really honest with myself, my motivation can sometimes be so that my name is out there.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know, because that's just our human nature,
Mhm.
is we want to be known.
Yeah.
And so I have to check myself on that
Uh-huh.
all the time, you know?
And I do want to, I'm glad you brought that up because I do think, and why part of why I wanted to talk about motivations in ministry is I think ministry has shifted since we entered
Mhm.
ministry, vocational ministry, because, for example, right now we're hiring at our church a students minister. We cannot find one.
Mhm.
People just do not want to do youth ministry.
Yep.
They want to plant churches. They want to be the lead pastor immediately, and that may be what God calls people to do. But I see kind of this we have a celebrity culture that
Yes.
we think that becoming a pastor or a pastor's wife is I don't even know if we would sometimes even admit it to ourselves, but we think sometimes it's a ticket to
Yes.
honor.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think you hit that right on the head.
So what
And
would you say to that? I mean, I think check
whew,
us, Chrissy, like,
mhm.
we need to be checked on that.
Yeah. I mean, and I think I sometimes go a little overboard with it, but I think twice. I am on Twitter and Instagram, but I think twice, three, four times about everything I post because I'm afraid. Like you don't see me post very much. I just don't because I am constantly like, okay, am I doing this so that people will like it or that the right person will see it? And so um I don't know. I have to be really, really careful about what I'm doing. And that's me. And I often ask myself, well, maybe God has given me a platform and I'm not using it. And so I also wrestle with that of I do need to be faithful because the people in my church know who I am and they might want to know what I've learned, what I'm learning about this scripture and what I have to say about certain things. And that's good. And I need to tap into that and know that it's okay for me and good and right for me to share. And sometimes for me to not share is also doing a disservice and can be sinning and not speaking where God has called me to speak. Um, so just knowing when those times are, I tend to let the pendulum swing too far because I'm like, I'm afraid to overshare but then I don't want to say anything at all. And that's not right either. And so I'm just kind of trying to figure out, and I hate to just put it to social media, but really that's so much of where the world is and so much of where our culture is. And so I want to use it correctly. And I know I can tell you right now that's an area that I'm not being faithful in. And so I need to be faithful to to share what I'm learning, to share God's truth at the right time and in the right way.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just have to say, okay, I'm doing it, and here we go.
Mhm.
Because then I'm also afraid of, well, what if it hurts somebody's feelings, and
Mhm.
then they're going to think I'm mean. Um, so how can I say it in a not mean way? So
Yeah, okay, so, we've kinda touched on some things that draw our motivations to the surface where we can see it.
yeah.
How would you encourage us to kind of know or acknowledge what our impure motivations are?
Hmm. I mean, I almost get this like when if I get asked to do something, and I get asked to do more things now, as Dean gets asked to do more things, I get asked to do more things.
Mhm.
And I will feel, and my immediate response is, yes, that sounds great. And then I think because I've overcommitted myself too much and I have made mistakes too often that now I'm beginning to recognize this feeling of like, hold up and let's really pray. Um, so I'll give you an example. This past weekend, I had been asked, and I was asked back in September to speak for a women's conference at a college. I have never done anything like that. And they asked me to do it and they said, will you be our keynote speaker? And I was like, okay. Um, Sure. And so my immediate thought was, that is so cool. And I wonder if this will open the door to more, more conferences and more this and that. And then I thought about it and I'm like, I am in no place in my life to have any doors open to more. Like, I don't know if I could even do this one. And so I prayed, I talked to Dean, and I felt enough at peace to do this one and to just say, this is kind of a one off for right now because I do have a baby and I'm at a strange season in my life right now. Um, and so I did the one and I could feel, that little desire coming up in my heart of like, oh, this is really fun. Let's see how many more of these I can do. Not, not because I'm at the right place and the right time to do it, but just because, oh, that seems fun. Um, and so I don't know, I now feel this like still small voice, I guess, because I have tested it so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gone against it so much that it's becoming louder in my head, or I'm becoming more aware of it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the Holy Spirit checking me and holding me back. And I think that's a good thing. And
Yeah.
so, to those of you just starting in this, you're probably going to make more mistakes and, maybe do too much or not do enough. And then realize, oh, well, not going to do that again. Ministry and really anything, it's a lot of learning as you go and learning from your mistakes. And
Yes.
and praise God that He is a gracious God who forgives and who is bigger than our mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to return back to something you said at the beginning where you said, um, oh, I wish I could, or I wish I was this
Yeah.
kind of pastor's wife.
Hmm.
And I think that that's kind of a key for us to think about. What are we wishing that we were? But instead of focusing so much time on that, thinking more about, well, what are we? What has God made us to be? What is our personality? What is our life context, our church context, our family context? But also, what are our gifts? And
Hmm.
just trying to narrow in on that more and more, and just doing that, and being okay with that, I
Yeah.
think has been such a key for me.
Hmm.
Really, and that checks me a lot, because it's like, well, why do I want what that person has or what that person does? The Lord knows that I couldn't handle that, or that's just not what He has for me.
Right.
And as much as I think I could handle it or do it,
Hmm.
the truth is that He has me where He wants me. And so let me focus my gaze there
Okay.
instead.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And it's a spirit of contentedness
Yeah.
that I do think as we age, that's a blessing that God kind of gives us. I think you need the gift of experience and life lived to get there. Contentedness is going to be easier for me to come by now than 20-year-old me or
Me
30-year-old
too.
me.
Me too.
Um, so I am grateful for those years of experience, um, and some of the discontent that has come with it, because it's taught me that, okay, so let's say I do all the things that I want to do, it's not going to fill me, because only Christ fills me. And
Hmm.
me knowing that I am doing what He wants me to do, that is really and truly where the fulfillment is.
Yeah. Are you a 3 on the Enneagram?
I'm a 9.
You're a
And I
9.
didn't want to be a 9. I kept taking the test because I
Oh,
was like, I don't know that I like 9s, but I actually, and now I know Enneagrams enough just to know that I'm a 9.
okay.
I haven't really studied it, but I knew that I was a 9, and then I read the description and I'm like, they don't decide things, and I can't make up my mind. Um, and very low key. And then, but you know what? Some of my favorite people that I've met, they're like, I'm a 9. Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
My husband's a 9, and he always says it's the best because it's the highest number. So you're the
So,
best. Well,
oh,
thank
well,
you
thanks.
so much, Chrissy, for giving us your insight, your hard-won
Oh,
insight over
yeah.
decades of ministry. I know it is an encouragement to people listening. It's an encouragement to me to keep going,
Thank you.
to
Yeah.
keep enduring, and keep doing it for the Lord's eyes alone, right?
Yes.
So
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's who we want to please.
thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Christine. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to the Ministry Wives podcast, a production of the North American Mission Board. If you found this content helpful, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcast platform, or share it with a friend. You can find this podcast and other helpful resources at ministrywivespodcast.com.